6 times. He has wiped her memory 6 times. 6 times in 5 years he sat in the dark beside her sleeping body and took everything. His name, his face, his forest. The 6 weeks she spent becoming the only person alive who made him feel like a man instead of just a king. Took all of it and folded it into himself like broken glass and carried it while she woke up somewhere safe and ordinary with nothing but a hollow ache in her chest and no idea what it meant. 6 times he told himself it was the last time. 6 times she found her way back. Not because she remembered. She never remembered. She came back the way the tide comes back to the shore. Not choosing it, not thinking about it, pulled by something that lives beneath memory, in the blood, in the bones, in the part of a person that exists before they have words for anything. He is 32 years old, and he has already lived enough grief. He is the most feared wolf alive. He has ended border wars before they became real wars. He has held this territory through 4 brutal winters and never lost a single thing he decided to keep, except her. He loses her every time he tries to save her. And she comes back. Every single time she comes back. This is the 7th time. It has been 6 months since the last erasure. 6 months. The shortest gap yet. She is not supposed to be back for at least another year. The bond is getting stronger, and his window is getting smaller. And the enemy that made him do this in the first place is 3 days from his border. Something about this time feels different. Something about this time feels like the last. The wolf who found her was young, barely 8 months in the pack, still learning the border routes, still at the age where everything feels like a test he might fail. His name was Aldrich, and he was diligent and careful and had not yet encountered anything his training had not covered. She was not in his training. She was sitting on a fallen log at the tree line with her boots unlaced and a hand-drawn map spread across her knees. A map that was, by any honest measure, completely wrong. She had drawn it herself from memory. The memory was not hers to keep. It had been taken from her 6 months ago by a man who told himself he was doing the right thing. Aldrich stepped out of the tree line with his hand on his blade. She looked up. Most people, when confronted by an Ashbourne border wolf, ran immediately. Some froze. One traveling merchant had sat down in the road and simply refused to engage with the situation for a considerable amount of time. She folded her map with the unhurried calm of someone who had never quite learned appropriate fear and said, "I think I'm lost, or I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I genuinely can't work out which." Aldrich stared at her. She had dark hair and steady eyes, and she smelled like rain and wildflowers and something underneath, something he had no name for, something that made every nerve in his body stand at rigid attention as though a current had passed clean through him. He didn't understand it. He was too new for the stories, too young to know what that particular stillness meant, or why his hands had started shaking, or why every wolf within half a mile had gone absolutely silent. Protocol said strangers at the border got escorted out. He found himself walking her in instead. He would spend years struggling to explain why. The answer was not complicated. The bond did not negotiate. It did not ask. It simply pointed, the way a compass points north, and trusted that the person holding it had enough sense to follow. The Ashbourne Palace sat at the place where the forest cracked open into a valley. Dark stone, high narrow windows, and 5 years of a specific kind of silence. Not the silence of emptiness. The silence of a man who had stopped expecting company and quietly, without making a decision about it, built his life around the absence. Eva stood at the gates and looked up at it. Something moved in her chest the moment she saw it. Not recognition. She had no memory of this place, not in any life she could account for. Something closer than recognition. The feeling of a word sitting right at the tip of the tongue, certain and infuriating, almost there and then not. The feeling of reaching for something in the dark and finding the shape of where it should be. She had felt it for as long as she could remember. 5 years of it. This hollow, nameless pull that lived in her sternum and pointed east. She had moved twice following it. Her friends called it restlessness. Her sister called it avoidance. She had called it nothing because she had no name for it. Only the direction, only the pull, only the recurring sense that somewhere she had not been was waiting for her to arrive. The gates opened before Aldrich announced her. A man was already in the courtyard, older than Valon, somewhere in his 40s, with the particular bearing of someone who had stood beside power for long enough that some of it had settled into his posture. Dark eyes that found her across the courtyard and went very still. Not the stillness of surprise, something heavier than surprise, something that looked like a man recognizing a thing he had been dreading and half hoping for at once. "My Lord Soren," Aldrich said with a careful tilt of his head. "I found her at the eastern border. She had a map." "I can see that," Soren said. He had not looked away from her. She held the map up briefly. "It's not especially accurate, but it got me here." Something moved across his face. Not quite a smile, the shadow of one, tired and warm and carrying something she could not identify. "It always does," he said quietly. She did not know what that meant. She filed it away. He arranged a room, had tea sent up, told her the king would see her shortly, that she should make herself comfortable, that she was welcome to wait in the east sitting room. She went to the east sitting room and stood at the window and looked out at the garden below and felt the hollow ache in her chest do something it had not done in 5 years of following her around. It went quiet, not gone, just still, like something that had been straining toward a direction had finally, after a very long time, reached it. She stood at the window for a long time and did not move and did not think and simply let it be quiet. Soren found Valen exactly where he always was when he was holding something at a distance, the war room. Maps spread across the long table, markers moved and moved again. Reports stacked and restacked in the particular pattern of a man doing enough with his hands to keep his head occupied. He had been here since before dawn. His wolves had learned not to interrupt him when he looked like this. They called it his working mood. Soren had a different name for it that he kept to himself. "We have a visitor," Soren said from the doorway. "Handle it." Valen did not look up. Aldrich brought her in from the eastern border. The marker in Valen's hand stopped moving. One beat of silence, small enough that only Soren, who had spent 15 years learning the precise vocabulary of this man's pauses, would have caught it. "Her," Valen said, flat. Not a question. The voice of a man who has been bracing for something and has just felt it land. She had a hand-drawn map. Drew it herself by the look of it. Told Aldrich she wasn't sure why she came this direction. Just felt right. Valen set the marker down. He did not look up. How long was she traveling? 3 days. It's been 6 months. Yes. She wasn't supposed to come back for at least a year. The last time it took 11 months. His voice had gone very careful. The voice of a man reciting facts because facts are easier to hold than what lives underneath them. 6 months. She came back in 6 months. Yes. Does she? He stopped. Started again. Does she remember anything? Nothing. Gave her name at the gate like it was the only one she'd ever had. Valen's jaw worked once. Stilled. In the 5 years since the first erasure, Soren had watched this man carry something he was not built to carry. Not the grief of losing her, though that was part of it, but the specific and compounding weight of choosing to lose her, over and over, by his own hand, for reasons that had seemed clear at the time and grown murkier with every repetition. He had watched the king become someone who woke before dawn, not because he had work to do, but because sleeping too long left too much room for thought. He had watched it happen 6 times now. He had made a decision 3 erasures ago that he would not watch it happen a 7th. "Send her away," Vason said. "Safe escort. Money for the road. Make sure she gets back to." "You said that the last time," Soren said. "And the time before. You have said it every time. And this time I mean it. You meant it every time." Silence. The fire in the hearth shifted and resettled. Outside the window, the forest stood at the edge of the valley in the grey morning light, patient and dark, full of things that did not forget. "There is something else," Soren said. "Tell me." "The Moon Witch sent word this morning. She will not perform the erasure again." He said it plainly. Soren had always delivered hard things plainly, because Valen hated to be managed. "She says the bond has been interrupted too many times. That doing it again would damage something that cannot be repaired. Not in Eva." Valen looked up. "In me," he said. "Yes." The word sat between them. She was specific? "She said you would understand what she meant without her having to be." A long pause. I understand, Valen said quietly. He looked back at the map. His eyes, in the grey morning light, were not gold, not the amber of authority or the dark of anger. They were the colour of something worn down to its last layer, something that had been strong for a very long time and was beginning to show the shape of what was underneath. There is also the matter of the Vorin brothers, Soren said. They crossed the northern ridge yesterday, 20 wolves, moving fast and quiet. How long? 2 days. Less if they push. And she's here. Yes, of course she is. Not bitterly, just tired. The exhaustion of a man watching pieces of a situation assemble themselves around him. Someone told them she was back. It appears so. We have a leak. Find it. He straightened. Today, before nightfall. He picked the marker up again, set it down again, and put her in the east sitting room. Don't tell her anything. I'll come to her. And then? The question sat in the air. Valen did not answer it. He looked at his map and said nothing, and Soren, who had known him long enough to understand that silence, left the room without pushing. She was not sitting when he came in. She was at the window, standing with her forehead almost touching the glass, looking down at the garden below, at the rows of lavender that ran along the east wall. Her hands were loose at her sides. She had the look of someone in the middle of reaching for something just outside their grasp. He stopped in the doorway. He had promised himself in the corridor that he would be quick, courteous, that he would give her a reasonable explanation, arrange the escort, have her on the road before she had time to ask the questions he could not yet answer. He had made this same promise with equal sincerity 5 times before. He stood in the doorway and looked at her and did not move. She turned before he spoke. She always did that. Some awareness that preceded sound, some frequency she picked him up on that had nothing to do with hearing. "Oh," she said. "Sorry, I was just." She glanced back at the window. "There's something about that garden. I keep looking at it." "I know," he said. She tilted her head. "Do you own this place?" "Yes." "It's beautiful," said simply. Not to flatter. She had the manner of someone who did not bother flattering. "I'm Eva. I'm sorry for wandering in uninvited. I have a habit of following feelings to places without fully thinking through the logistics." "You're not unwelcome," he said. The words came out before he chose them. They always did with her. 5 years of deciding to keep his distance, and she dissolved it without trying, without knowing, the way light dissolves a thing without meaning to, just by being what it is. "I'm Valen," he said. The effect was immediate and small, and it hit him like a stone to the chest. Her brow drew in. A flicker. Not recognition. Nothing so clean as recognition, but the thing that lives beneath recognition. The feeling of a name that lands somewhere deeper than the ears. Her lips parted slightly and then closed. She shook her head once, very slightly, the way you shake off something you can't place. "Valen," she repeated, quietly, almost to herself. "Yes." She looked at him with those steady, direct eyes. "It suits you. You look exactly like a Valen." "I've been told that," he said. She had told him that. On the day they met, standing by a river, looking at him like he was something she was deciding whether to find interesting. She decided yes. She always decided yes. He should send her away. He had a plan. He had a speech ready. He had every reason. "Have you eaten?" he asked. "You've been traveling." She brightened in the honest, uncomplicated way of someone who has been hungry for several hours and too polite to mention it. "Not since this morning." He sent for food. Down the corridor, Soren received the message from the kitchen and stood very still for a moment. Then he went back to looking for the leak. There was nothing else to be done. He chose the small dining room deliberately. The great hall was wrong for her. Too high, too formal, too much stone and portrait and expectation pressing from every surface. This room was low-ceilinged and firelit, and she had, within the first minute of entering, pulled her chair closer to the hearth without asking permission. He had anticipated that. He had anticipated most things about her for 5 years. She ate without apology for appetite, which he had always found, across 6 versions of this, across 6 attempts to keep her at a safe distance, unreasonably endearing. "So," she said, tearing bread with cheerful efficiency, "king or lord or something else. This place has a very particular kind of energy." "King," he said. She pointed a piece of bread at him in a way that would have startled his entire court. You don't seem like what I'd expect. What did you expect? More performance. You seem very straightforward. Performance wastes time. That's exactly what I mean. She smiled. It was the same smile it had always been. Warm and slightly wry, aimed at him like he was worth the attention. How long have you been king? 7 years. Do you like it? Nobody asked him that. In 7 years of ruling the Ashbourne territory, that question had been asked exactly once, by exactly one person, in different words, every time she came back. Some days, he said, honestly, not others. That's the right answer, she said. I'd worry about someone who liked it all the time. She looked toward the window. The forest was dark beyond the glass. The reaching look moved across her face, the one that lived just beneath all her other expressions, permanent and quiet as a low tide. Can I ask you something strange? She said. Yes. Do you ever feel like something is missing? She chose her words carefully, looking for the right shape. Not a specific thing, not something you can name. More like a space. Like there used to be something filling a particular part of you, and now there isn't, and you've learned to live around it without ever knowing what it was. The fire between them crackled softly. He looked at her across the table. Yes, he said. I know that feeling well. She held his gaze. Something moved between them in the quiet, not chosen, not announced. The way a current moves under still water felt before it's seen. You said that like you really meant it, she said softly. I did. She was quiet for a moment. Then she looked back at her plate and said, in a tone that was casual and deliberate at once, I'd like to stay a few days if that's all right. I don't know exactly why I came here, but I feel like the reason is close. Like if I stay still long enough, it'll come to me. He should say no. He had the word ready. He had been ready for it since before he walked into the sitting room. Stay as long as you need, he said. The following day, she woke before the sun. The palace staff were unprepared for this. Valen, who had not slept, was not. He watched from the upper window as she crossed the dark courtyard in the early grey light, with her coat pulled close, moving with the easy certainty of someone going somewhere familiar, which was impossible. She had arrived yesterday. She did not know this palace. She went directly to the East Garden. She stopped at the lavender. He watched her stand among it, the long rows of it, grey-purple in the pre-dawn, moving slightly in the cold morning air. Watched her close her eyes and breathe it in slowly. Watched the expression that crossed her face, not quite peace, not quite grief, the feeling of something half-remembered that will not fully come. She did not pick any. She just stood. Aldrich found her there when he came to check on her. He had appointed himself her unofficial escort with the guileless devotion of a young wolf whose instincts were considerably ahead of his. Understanding. Do you know this garden? She asked without turning. Lavender, my lady, it's always been here. I know what lavender is. She touched a stem lightly. I mean, do you know when it was planted? Who planted it? Aldrich, who had been briefed carefully by Soren on what to say and what to absolutely not say, said, It's been here as long as I've known the palace. Which was true. It had been planted 5 years ago, 2 weeks after the first erasure, by a king who could not adequately explain to himself why he was doing it, only that it felt necessary, that she would come back eventually, and there should be lavender here when she did. She had been coming back for 5 years. There had always been lavender. I feel like I should know this garden, Eva said. Like I've stood in this exact spot before. She turned to look at Aldrich. Does that sound strange? He flushed. He was not good at this. People sometimes feel connected to places they... That is a very careful answer, she said, with a look that saw straight through it. You're very young to be that careful. He went red to his ears. She let him off with a smile and asked him nothing else. But for the rest of the morning, her hand kept drifting to her coat pocket, checking for something, finding nothing, returning to her side and drifting back again without her seeming to notice she was doing it. The first time he had sent her away, Valen had tucked a sprig of lavender into her coat pocket. She wouldn't remember it. It meant nothing. It changed nothing. He had done it anyway, the way you do the only thing left available when all the meaningful options are gone. She checked her pockets every time she came back. He had never told anyone that. He found her in the library at noon. She had found it without being directed there, had drifted through the palace the way she always drifted, following some internal compass that pointed not toward interesting things but toward specific, particular things, things she had no reason to know about. The library, the eastern alcove, the low chair by the window where the afternoon light came in at a certain angle. Her chair. For 5 years it had been her chair without her knowing it. She was sitting in it with a book open and unread across her knees, looking at the shelves with the reaching expression. "There should be a green book," she said before he made a sound. She had heard him on the threshold. "Third shelf from the bottom, about 6 across from the left. I'm quite sure of it." He crossed to the shelf and looked. No green book, not any more. A collection of Eastern folklore, bought from a market 2 towns over, which she had once spent an entire rainy afternoon reading aloud in this alcove. Different voices, complete commitment, making him feel things he had not expected to feel from a woman he had known for 3 weeks. He had moved it after her second return. He had not been able to explain the decision to himself then, and could not entirely explain it now. Some things needed to be kept in different rooms. "Not there," he said. She frowned, not at where the book wasn't but precisely at the gap where it had been, which she had no way of knowing. "I was certain." He came and sat in the chair across from her. His chair. The one that had been his across this table, watching her sleep in that alcove during long, quiet afternoons 5 years ago. "Do you believe things can be known without being remembered?" she asked. He looked at her. "Yes, I think the body keeps things the mind gives back." "That's an interesting way to say it. You're doing it now. The garden this morning, the book just now. You knew where things were." She looked at him sharply. It was the first time he had said anything that acknowledged what she was noticing instead of smoothing over it. "Yes," she said carefully. "I am." A pause. "You're not surprised?" "No. Why not?" He held her gaze. "Not yet," he said quietly. "I'll tell you, just not yet." She studied him. The long, careful, unhurried study she gave things that mattered to her, reading something in him that most people did not bother looking for. "Valen," she said, "what aren't you telling me?" The afternoon light moved slowly across the floor. "More than I should have kept," he said. "Less than I'll keep tomorrow." She held the answer in silence for a moment. Then she nodded, the nod of someone filing something away, accepting the form of the answer without releasing the question behind it. "Soon," she said. Not a request, a deadline. "Soon," he agreed. She looked back at the shelf, where the green book wasn't. Her hand moved to her coat pocket, checked. Found nothing. "Whatever it is," she said quietly, to the shelf rather than to him. "I think I already know the shape of it. I just don't have the words yet." He said nothing. She was right. She had always been right about the shape of things. Soren came to the war room after the palace had settled. Valon was at the window, not working, just standing, looking out at the valley, at the dark tree line, at the single lit window in the east guest wing. He had been standing there long enough that the fire behind him had burned down without being tended. "The Vorin brothers are closer than we thought," Soren said. He set a folded report on the desk. "My riders tracked them to the Hallow Ridge this afternoon. They're not 2 days out, they're 1. Valen did not turn from the window. "Someone fed them our timeline. Yes, the leak is further in than I hoped. I've narrowed it to 3 people. I'll have a name before midnight." "Good." Soren waited. When Valen said nothing else, he came to stand beside him at the window. 2 men looking at the same lit window from the same angle, which was the kind of thing that meant different things to each of them. "The witch won't do it," Velancelon said. "Not a question." "No. Even if She was explicit, Valen. I pushed. She said what she said and she meant it." "What exactly did she say? Her exact words?" Soren was quiet for a moment. She said, "The bond is not a river you can keep damming. It finds its way regardless." She said, "The magic has been working against itself for 5 years, that each erasure has cost more than the last, that the 6th one cost you something you have not admitted to yourself yet." He paused. She said, "If you do it again, you will not lose the memory of Eva. You will lose the capacity to recognize her. That your wolf will still know her, but the part of you that is a man, the part that sat with her and learned her and chose her, that part will go dark, permanently." The fire shifted in the hearth behind them. "She said you would know what that means," Soren said, "and that you would know it is not a risk she will help you take." Valen was very still. "I do know what it means," he said. "Yes, I thought you might." A long silence, the kind that had weight. "She came back in 6 months," Valen said. 6 months, Soren. The first time it was almost a year, then 8 months, then 7, then 6.5, now 6. He turned from the window. "The bond is pulling harder each time. It is not weakening. Nothing I have done has weakened it." "No," Soren said simply. "It hasn't, which means even if the witch would do it, she'd be back in 4 months, then 3, then less." He pressed 2 fingers to his eyes briefly, lowered them. "I have to tell her." Soren was quiet for a beat, making sure he had heard correctly. "Everything," he said. "Everything. From the beginning." He moved away from the window, toward the door. "Have the Eastern Patrol doubled tonight. No gaps. And get me that name before midnight." "Valen!" Soren stopped him with his voice, not his hand. "She's going to be angry. I know. Genuinely angry. Not quietly upset. Angry. She has every right to be. I just want you to be prepared." Valen paused in the doorway. Something passed through his face. Not quite a smile, and not quite the opposite. The expression of a man who has been dreading a particular conversation and has just decided to stop dreading it. "I've been unprepared for her since the day she sat down in my river," he said. "I don't expect that to change." He went to find her. He knocked. She opened the door within seconds. Fully dressed, lamplit. She had not been sleeping. He had not expected her to have been. She looked at him, said nothing, stepped back to let him in. Her journal was open on the bed. Pages of small, close writing and rough sketches. He caught a glimpse of it before she picked it up, moved it off the bed, and held it in both hands, waiting. He sat in the chair by her window. She sat on the edge of the bed facing him. The lamp between them was low and warm, and made the room feel smaller than it was, which was either fortunate or not, depending on what was about to be said. "You're going to tell me now," she said. "Yes, all of it, yes." She nodded once. "All right." He told her about the river, not the palace, the river first, because that was where it began. A border patrol on a Wednesday morning, and a woman sitting on a fallen log with her boots off, looking up at him without flinching and telling him he looked like he owned the water. How he had sat down beside her without deciding to. How she had looked at him like he was interesting, and how that had felt to a man who was accustomed to being feared and respected and kept at a careful distance, like something he had not known he was missing. 6 weeks. He told about 6 weeks, about learning that she argued when she disagreed and laughed when something was genuinely funny, and asked questions that assumed he had actual thoughts and feelings which most people did not assume. About the afternoon in the library with the folklore book, about the lavender she had found in the garden and pronounced her favorite, and the reason he had planted it the moment she was gone. He told her about the letter. A rival faction, the Vorin family, whose fathers had been building grievances against the Ashbourne pack for a generation, who had discovered that the king who had no vulnerabilities had quietly and inconveniently developed one, that they were watching the palace, that they had names, resources, and a clear intention to use her against him. He told her about the decision, about the Moon Witch, about sitting in her room at midnight 5 years ago with her hand in his, asleep, while he said things he had been saving because he had believed there would be more time. There is never more time. "I told myself I would fix it," he said, "that once they were dealt with I would come back for you, explain everything." "But they weren't dealt with," she said. "Not for the first 8 months. By the time the immediate threat passed, you had a life somewhere. Friends."
A rhythm, you seemed.
"Content," she said. "Yes. And then I came back anyway, 8 months after the first erasure. You showed up at the northern border with mud on your boots and a look on your face like you'd been walking for days without knowing why." She was very still. "What did you do?" she asked. "The second time." He held her gaze. "I told myself the threat hadn't fully passed, that it wasn't safe, that one more time would be enough. But it wasn't. No. And the third time, I almost told you. I had decided to. I came to your room and you were asleep, and I sat there for an hour and—" He stopped. "I told myself you were peaceful. That you looked peaceful and I would ruin it. That wasn't your decision to make, she said. Quiet, precise. The voice of someone who is angry and is choosing deliberately to stay controlled. No, he said. It wasn't. None of it was. 6 times, Valen. She said his name carefully, like she was testing what it felt like now that she knew what it carried. 6 times in 5 years. Yes. I'm 26 years old and you have taken 5 years of my life and parceled them out in pieces I couldn't keep. Yes. And now you're telling me because you have no other option. Because the witch won't help you, and the enemy is a day out, and the alternative is losing the ability to know me at all. He did not look away. Yes, all of that is true. She stood up. She crossed to the window and stood with her back to him, looking out at the dark garden below. He waited. He had learned her silences across 6 versions of this, knew which ones needed to be filled and which ones needed to be left alone. This one needed to be left alone. She stood at the window for a long time. I want to see the letters, she said finally. He stilled. What? You wrote letters you didn't send. She turned. Soren mentioned it this afternoon. He didn't mean to. He caught himself and moved on, but I heard it. Her eyes were steady and very serious. I want to read them. Everyone. After all of this is over, I want to read every word you wrote and couldn't send and chose to carry by yourself instead. He said nothing for a moment. They are not comfortable reading, he said. Good, she said. Neither is this conversation. He nodded slowly. After you can read them after. After, she repeated. She sat back down on the edge of the bed, picked up the journal from beside her, held it for a moment, and then held it out to him. He took it. The page it fell open to had a drawing on it, rough and imprecise the way her drawings always were. She had never been technically skilled, only compelled, drawing the way people hum songs they can't remember learning. But clear enough, more than clear enough, the east garden, the lavender, drawn from the angle of this window, this room which she had been given tonight and had never been in before. He turned the page. The river, his river, at the eastern border, with a fallen log and the morning light through the trees, at the exact angle of someone sitting on the bank with their boots off. He turned another page, his hands, rendered carefully from the angle of someone whose hands were being held. He knew the moment. He knew exactly which moment she had drawn without knowing she was drawing it. He closed the journal, held it for a beat, gave it back. Valen, she said, am I right about what these mean? Yes, he said, you're right. Something moved through her face, not relief exactly, something more complicated. The feeling of a thing confirmed that the body has known for a long time, and the mind has been trying to catch up to. Then tell me about tomorrow, she said. The Vorin brothers. What's coming and how bad it is. Don't soften it. Eva, I'm not someone who needs things softened. You should have learned that about me. I did learn it, he said. That was never why I know, she said. Her voice dropped slightly. I know why you did it. I'm still angry. I'm going to be angry for a while. But I understand that it was fear, not cruelty. She met his eyes. Fear is not a small thing. I'm not dismissing it. He looked at her. He had spent 5 years carrying every version of her she had been. The one by the river, the one in the library, the one who fell asleep in a chair with a folklore book across her chest. He had been so focused on protecting the woman she had been that he had failed every time to reckon properly with the woman she was. The Vorin brothers are 1 day out, he said. Not 2. 1. We have a leak inside the palace. Soren is finding them tonight. The brothers have 20 wolves, and they know this territory because someone has been feeding them information for weeks. She absorbed this. What do they want? Leverage. They believe that finding you gives them a way to get through me, that I will make compromises I would not otherwise make to protect you. Would you? She asked. Direct. Yes, he said, without hesitation. Then we make sure they don't get the chance to find out, she said. She looked at the journal in her hands. I'm staying. I need you to not argue with that. I know you're staying. You're not going to try to send me away. No, he said it quietly. No, I'm done doing that. She looked at him for a long moment, reading him, finding, it seemed, what she was looking for. Good, she said. Then tell me the plan, all of it, and we make it better together. They worked until the early hours. Eva sat at the war table like a woman who had been thinking strategically her whole life, which she had not. But she had spent 5 years developing the habit of working problems from multiple angles, a habit that Valen suspected was not coincidental, was in fact another fingerprint of the bond, shaping her quietly toward the things that would matter. "They expect you to hide me," she said for the second time, because it was important and she wanted him to fully hear it. "That is their entire plan. Every move they're making is premised on you repeating what you've always done, removing me from the equation, fighting defensively, keeping me separate from this. It's worked before," Valon said. "It worked because you were willing to do things to me that they believed you wouldn't be willing to do." She said it plainly. "They thought you would protect me by keeping me close. You protected me by making me disappear. They couldn't plan for something they didn't think you were capable of." She looked at the map. "But you've done it 6 times. If they've been watching this carefully, they know the pattern now. They know you'll try to move me. They'll have people positioned between here and wherever you'd send me." Soren, across the table, looked at the map. His expression shifted. "She's right," he said. "She usually is," Valon said quietly. Eva looked up at him. A small surprised pause. She had not expected that from him, the openness of it, the absence of qualification. "The leak," she said, refocusing. "Do we have a name?" "A young courier called Emmett," Soren said. "He confessed an hour ago. He's been feeding them information for 3 weeks. He didn't know what he was doing would lead to this. He thought he was reporting on trade movements. Someone recruited him under false pretenses. Then he doesn't know our new plan. Nothing discussed in this room tonight? No. Good." She leaned over the map. "Then here is what I think. We don't hide. We let them come to the border, expecting a defensive position, expecting the king to be protecting a vulnerability. And instead they find wolves who have been waiting all night, who know exactly which paths they'll take, because those are the paths someone spent 3 weeks telling them were safe, who are ready for a fight instead of a retreat." The war room was quiet. "We used the leak against them," Valen said. "We already have the information they wanted us not to have. We know they're coming. We know their timeline. We know approximately what routes they've been told are viable." She straightened. "That's enough." Valen looked at her across the war table. In the candlelight, with the map between them, she looked like someone who had always been in rooms like this, like someone who had been preparing for this conversation in some unremembered part of herself for 5 years. "Soren," he said, without looking away from her, "pull the Eastern Patrol and reset them on the Hallow approach. Double the river crossing. Nobody moves until I give the word." "And her," Soren said. "She stays close to me," Valen said. It was the first time he had said that, without it costing him something to say. He took her to the river before the waiting became unbearable. They walked through the forest in the early light without speaking. She had always been comfortable in silence with him, even now, even carrying everything he had told her the night before. The silence between them had always had a particular quality. Not empty, not tense, simply inhabited. The river appeared through the trees, and she stopped. She looked at it for a moment, the sound of it, the light on the water, the fallen log at the near bank. Then she walked to the log and sat down and pulled off her boots with the easy, practiced movements of someone doing something they have always done. She put her feet in the water. She looked up at him from the bank. "You look like you own the river," she said. He felt it move through him. "I do own the river. I know," a quiet smile. "I know that now." He sat beside her on the log. The water moved over the stones below their feet, cold and clear and indifferent to all of it, to 5 years, to 6 erasures, to 2 people trying to find their way back to something across a considerable amount of wreckage. "I want the memories back," she said. "When this is over, is it possible? Can she give back what she took?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "I never asked her." She turned to look at him. "Because you never planned for me to stay," she said, not unkindly, a fact being named. "Yes. Ask her," she said. "Whatever happens today and tonight, after you ask her. I want all of it, every version. I've spent 5 years with this hollow thing in my chest, and now I know what shape it is, and I want it filled." She looked back at the water. I want to remember the library and the folklore book. I want to remember the lavender the first time I found it. A pause. I want to remember whatever argument we had about food that you clearly think about a lot. Something moved through his face. Stew, he said. Was it stew? You were wrong about the stew. I want to hear the whole argument before I accept that. You were comprehensively and specifically wrong. That is a strong position to take about stew. He looked at her. The morning light came through the trees at the angle he knew, the specific particular angle he had memorized 5 years ago on a morning, not unlike this one. She had her boots off and her feet in his river, and she was arguing with him about a stew she didn't remember, and she was, against everything he had tried to arrange here. We have time, he said. I'll make the case properly. Her hand found his on the log between them, the way it always had, not searching, not tentative, simply certain. He turned his palm and held it. Ask the witch, she said quietly. I'll ask the witch, he said. They came at midnight, not dawn as Soren had expected from their pace. The leak had given them more than position, had given them timing, had told them to move fast before the patrols could be restructured, had told them the king would be defensive, and the girl would be hidden, and the palace would be caught between protecting two things at once. They came through the eastern tree line in formation, 20 wolves, moving without torches, trusting the dark and the information they had been given, and the element of surprise. They had none of those things. Valen's wolves were already in the trees, had been since midnight, had been placed, with surgical precision, at every point along the routes that 3 weeks of careful misinformation had made to look unguarded. They were not unguarded. They had been waiting. The fight in the forest was fast and brutal and entirely one-sided. Eva was at the palace's eastern wall with Soren and 4 of Valen's most trusted wolves, which was where Valen had asked her to stay, which she had agreed to, and she stayed there for 14 minutes. Then a Vorin wolf broke from the tree line 50 yards to the east. Not heading toward the sound of the fighting, heading away from it, angled toward the palace wall at a point she recognized, in the part of her that recognized things without knowing why, as a gap. She moved before she thought about it. Her body decided, and her mind caught up 2 steps later. Soren found her standing over the incapacitated wolf with a branch in her hands and a look of very focused calm on her face. You were meant to stay at the wall, he said. He was going for the gap at the east corner, she said. He'd have been inside in under a minute. How did you know there was a gap at the east corner? She looked at the branch. I just knew. Soren was quiet for a moment. He looked at the wolf on the ground. He looked at her. He thought about 5 years of a king who had been trying to protect something that had, in every version of itself, been considerably more capable than he had given it credit for. Stay next to me, he said. From this point, directly next to me. Obviously, she said, and matched his pace without being asked. The Vorin brothers were taken before the sun came up. Valen made the choice to take them alive in the last moment. Not mercy exactly, but the clarity of a man who has learned that lasting solutions are better than satisfying ones. The courier Emmett had already confessed. The leak was sealed. The eastern border was quiet and grey in the early light, and smelled like frost and pine and nothing else. Eva was on the steps of the palace's east entrance when Valen came through the gate. She had a cut on her temple that was healing faster than it should have been, and the particular stillness of someone on the other side of a long night, not exhausted, just very present, the way people get when they have been afraid and it is over, and the body is remembering how to be ordinary again. He came to the steps and sat beside her without speaking. He looked at the cut on her temple without touching it. That needs to be looked at, he said. It's fine. It's healing. Eva, it started closing on its own about an hour ago, she said. I watched it. It's a little unsettling, but I'm choosing to find it interesting rather than alarming. She touched it lightly. The hearing thing was 3 months ago. Now this, it's been accelerating. The bond, he said. The closer and more consistently you're near your mate, the more it bleeds over, she said. Yes. So 6 months of the bond pulling me back here, and 5 years of it simmering underneath was enough. Yes, she nodded slowly. Is it permanent? The hearing? Yes. The healing, he paused. It will strengthen over time if you stay. When I stay, she said. He looked at her. When I stay, she repeated, calmly and without drama. Not if. The morning light moved across the stone steps between them. Below the east garden, the lavender was grey-green in the early cold, still and quiet, waiting for the sun. I'm still angry, she said. I want to be clear about that. I'm going to be angry about it for a while, and I need you to not try to manage that. I won't, he said. You have a tendency to manage things. I know. I'm telling you now so you know that I know. Understood. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm also here, she said, and you didn't send me away, and that's a beginning. She paused. It's a different kind of beginning than the first one, harder, more honest. Yes, he said, both of those things. He put his arm around her. Below them, the wolves who had spent the night in the forest came back through the gate in ones and twos, tired and quiet and visibly relieved. Aldrich came through last. He saw them on the steps and stopped and smiled the uncomplicated, wholehearted smile of someone whose instincts had been right from the very beginning and was glad to have it confirmed. Valen, Eva said. The witch, yes, I'll ask her. She nodded against his shoulder. Today, not eventually. Today, he agreed. I want all of it back. Everything you remember that I should remember too. I want us to be starting from the same place for once. She paused. I want to know about the stew. You were wrong about the stew. She lifted her head. You keep saying that, because it remains true. I want evidence. I have 5 years of evidence, none of which I currently have access to, which is your fault, which means you owe me the full account before I agree to any verdict. He looked at her, at the cut healing on her temple, at the morning light on her face, at the expression she was wearing, still some anger in it, warm around the edges anyway, aimed at him like she had always aimed things at him, like he was worth the full force of it. We have time, he said. We'll do it properly. Her hand found his. He held it. The sun came over the valley wall and moved across the stone steps and caught the lavender in the garden below and turned it gold. We have time, he had said, and this time, for the first time in 5 years, both of them believed it. They say the Alpha King has ruled for 7 years, that he is fair and precise and does not lose things he decides to keep, that he has a mate now, a woman who appeared at the eastern border one autumn morning with a hand-drawn map and no idea why she had come and stayed, who argues with him at the war table and wins sometimes, who knows where the green book is supposed to be, and whose hand finds his without looking. They don't talk about the 5 years before that. He and Soren don't talk about it either, not directly. Some things are carried quietly by the people who were present for them. The Moon Witch came the afternoon of the same day. She worked in the east garden in the lavender for several hours. When it was done, Eva sat on the low bench by the garden wall and was very still for a long time. Not crying, just present in it, receiving 5 years of memory that arrived not all at once, but in layers the way warmth arrives after being cold for a long time, gradually and then completely. The river first. The fallen log. Boots off, feet in the water. A man stepping out of the trees who looked like he owned everything he touched. Then the library. The folklore book. 6 weeks of evenings that had felt like more than 6 weeks, because they were the kind of evenings that expand, that make room, that become larger in memory than they were in time. Then the other times. The waking in unfamiliar places with an ache she had no name for. The pull eastward. The maps she drew without knowing why. The lavender she checked her pockets for every time she came home. She sat with all of it until she had the shape of it. Then she went to find him. He was in the war room, moving markers, doing what he did. She stood in the doorway. He looked up, she said. You were wrong about the stew. He came across the room and kissed her before she could finish the sentence, which she maintained afterward was a transparent attempt to avoid losing an argument he had already lost. He said nothing in his defense. He simply did not stop smiling for the rest of the day. The letters came out of the box that week. She read them in the library alcove, in the afternoon light, in her chair. He sat across from her and pretended to work, and did not look up until she turned the last page and sat quietly with it for a long time. Then she got up and came to his chair and sat on the arm of it and put her head against his. He set down whatever he had been pretending to read. He put his arm around her. Outside, the valley was quiet. The lavender in the east garden was coming in, full and slow and purple in the late light. Aldrich was running the eastern border with the uncomplicated joy of a wolf who knew exactly where he was and why it mattered. The Alpha King was not at the window. He was in the library, in his chair with his arm around the woman he had spent 5 years trying to protect by letting go of, who had spent 5 years finding her way back regardless. He was staying. It turned out that was the only thing she had ever needed from him. Not the sacrifice, not the careful, painful, repeated choice to lose her for her own good. Just this. Just him in a chair in the afternoon, not leaving. It had always been that simple. He had just needed 5 years and 6 mistakes to finally understand it.